I'm not coming in saying optimistic is the way to go. I'm not coming in saying ZK is the way to go. I'm saying we have a real problem. And we have users, by the way, that want a solution to that problem today. They don't want to wait. They want a solution today, and they want the best technology available today. And by the way, in 5 years, they're going to want the best technology available in 5 years. And I can promise you this, whether I'm a ZK maxi or an optimistic maxi, it doesn't matter. In 5 years, all this stuff is going to look primitive.
This episode is brought to you by Circle, the issuer of USDC, which hopefully, as you all know, is the preferred stablecoin of digital natives and crypto natives with over 1.5 million holders globally. You'll hear more about USDC later in the show.
Welcome everyone for another great episode in Empire. We have the privilege of having two folks that have been super deep in the Ethereum ecosystem since the earliest of days, at least as I can remember. So we're joined by Raul Jordan, co-founder of Prysmatic Labs, core developer of Ethereum at Ethereum. And we also have Stephen Goldfeder, co-founder of Off-Chain Labs, which a lot of you guys know as Arbitrum. So Off-Chain Labs is the developer behind the L2 called Arbitrum. So welcome, folks. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure. Good to meet you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to have you both here because I think in this discussion, there's a lot to cover. Obviously, you guys announced an acquisition recently, which is super important. I think we'll definitely get into. But before we get there, perhaps just level set the conversation. Maybe Raul, Stephen, give a brief background intro on yourselves, and then we can get started.
Raul, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, so my name is Raul Jordan. I'm one of the developers working on the Ethereum protocol and previously part of a team called Prysmatic Labs. We were an independent team of software engineers that kind of joined the Ethereum space because we wanted to make a difference in scalability and shipping the major upgrades that are on the roadmap for Ethereum. Most recently, we finally shipped proof of stake on Ethereum mainnet, getting rid of all Ethereum mining this past September, which is a significant milestone because it changes a lot of the dynamics of the protocol. We've done this in collaboration with several other teams that kind of joined us along the way, and we built a pretty strong following. Currently, our software is the most popular software used to run the Ethereum blockchain itself. It's called Prism, and so we've been deeply involved in the protocol for many years. And just recently, we all joined the Arbitrum family in Off-Chain Labs.
Hey, I'm Stephen Goldfeder. I am co-founder and CEO of Off-Chain Labs. That's the team building Arbitrum. And my background was, even before the company Off-Chain Labs was founded, during my time at Princeton, together with my two co-founders, actually. So I have my PhD from Princeton, and my co-founder, Ed, was a professor there for a long time. And Harry was also a PhD student in our group. And we were doing a lot of work related to crypto and blockchains. And one of them was, how do we scale blockchains and how do we scale smart contracts? And that was a project called Arbitrum, which started off as an academic project and then moved into a commercial project. And, Arbitrum actually, so if you look, the earliest mentions you'll find of Arbitrum online, the research phase actually predates Ethereum. But once Ethereum went live as the dominant smart contract platform with, the best tech and the best community, from the first days of the company, we were always about scaling Ethereum and how do we scale this smart contract platform in particular. And we are 4+ years, just over 4 years into the company now, and we are still asking ourselves, we've done a lot, and we have Arbitrum is live, and it's the leading layer 2 scaling platform for Ethereum today. But we're still asking ourselves, how do we do better? How do we make the experience even better for users and developers alike?
Definitely. So I want to touch a little bit on the acquisition first. So tell us a little bit about what started the conversation around the acquisition. When did that happen? You've been discussing that for a while, and how did all this came about?
So one thing to mention is, these were our two very, very strong teams, and Prysmatic Labs is, by one of the strongest Ethereum core developer teams. So the first thing that happened, this wasn't a team looking to sell itself, I'll say. This was really a meeting of the minds, and we got to meet each other over the past year, over the past 6 to 8 months, probably more deeply. We got to know each other, spend time together virtually and in person, and really, started with, I hate to say the word, but like nerd out sessions, whiteboarding sessions. Hey, what are you interested in? And as Raul will tell you, a lot of the Ethereum core development work, it has the same goal of like scaling Ethereum, building a scalable smart contract platform. And of course, there are different components to that. There's the layer 1 components that need to come into place, and also the layer 2 components. But at a very high level, from a values perspective, we were working on very related and parts of the same problem, I would even say. And from a technical perspective, had a lot of the same interests, and the conversations were just at the same time, we shared a lot, but we also learned a lot, right? So there was so much we had in common, but so much that our experiences complemented one another. And as we spent more time together over the past many months, it just became clear that there was so much that can be gained, both for us as teams, us as individuals, but also us as the Ethereum community, by us working together and having a single roadmap, a shared roadmap, I should say. And so that's basically, at least my view. I don't know if Raul would agree of how this came to be. It just over time, it became very obvious as we got to know each other.
Yeah, this really all started because, as we work on the Ethereum protocol's future, and we ask ourselves the question, like, where is Ethereum going? All the research and development has been leaning towards, layer 2 rollups, such as Arbitrum, right? So Ethereum is really focused on enabling rollups. And what that means is making them a lot cheaper to use, making them a lot more secure, and building tools that are baked into the protocol that just make it, make rollups that much better. So we started, when we were working on these things, we started asking ourselves, like, hey, like, the next frontier for Ethereum is really at layer 2, and really solving the problems that they face and making them just amazing pieces of technology. So we started looking, and it's clear Arbitrum was the best solution, the one that had so much on the roadmap, so many awesome things in the works, and got a chance to meet Steven, Ed, and Harry, and we just nerded out. We spent some time talking together, and we're like, hey, our teams are so similar. We have so much that that is shared on our roadmaps. Like, why don't we figure out how we can work closer together? And naturally, these discussions, one thing led to another, and now we're here.
That's great. And so I'm curious, Raul, from your perspective, having shipped the merge and Ethereum's successful transition to proof of stake, which was something that you've been working on for the last couple of years, what were the you talk about like the things that you're focused on after that, and that being in alignment with what Arbitrum is working on? Can you touch a little bit about on what those, because a lot of people say, well, the merge happened, okay, we're done, but what were you working on before this acquisition came about? What were kind of your goals, more so from like the Ethereum roadmap perspective?
Sure. So one big misconception that a few folks that might have had is that the merge is going to solve Ethereum scaling problems, right? Like,
that's right.
The merge actually was, it sets the foundation for the future of Ethereum, and one of the big ones was proof of stake. With proof of stake, you get so many benefits at the protocol level. It just make Ethereum that much better to use, and enables a lot easier upgrades in the future. So what we were really thinking about was, the scaling roadmap for Ethereum, and it's clear that Ethereum is going to scale through layer 2. The main thing to work on at the protocol level right now is how can we make rollups a lot cheaper and more secure to use. One of the big ones is that Arbitrum's biggest cost today is the money that, the transaction fees and the cost that it pays Ethereum to store data on chain, right? This data is needed in order for Arbitrum to maintain its security guarantees of fraud proofs. So the main thing we're working on is this thing called EIP 4844, which will add more data to Ethereum that will lower the cost of rollups such as Arbitrum by probably 100x, which is some of the estimates that are being placed. So imagine if today Arbitrum Nitro is the cheapest rollup solution out there in the market. Imagine being 10, 100x cheaper for many transactions. It will be a game changer. There's so much you can do on that front. So that's the immediate item that kind of we're focused on and we're looking at with our team, and also prototyping inside of Arbitrum Nitro.
I want to transition a little bit in more generally. Like, I think Prism is open source, is kind of free to use Ethereum clients, the most widely used, I believe. And that's really amazing in so many ways. This open source culture. I'm curious, like, how did the team fund itself? How did you think about monetization, the ongoing funding of Prysmatic Labs before the acquisition? Like, how do you build, I guess, like, succinctly, how do you build like a sustainable business model as like a open source developer?
Yeah, for developers that are, companies that are building open source software on Ethereum, you have to ask yourself some pretty hard questions, right? You have to make sure that whatever strategy that you pursue is aligned with the best interests of the protocol and also the best interests of your users. The work that we did was working on core development. It's a public good, right? We're building Ethereum. Ethereum already has kind of an asset, which is Ether. We can't go out and launch our own chain with our own token or anything like that. Of course, there are other teams that are working on open source software on Ethereum that were thinking about things like, they have like security audit firms on the side. They operate more like consultancies, where they work with bigger companies to provide services like that. That was one of the avenues that we explored. Over the past few years, we were just so laser focused on shipping the merge and getting things ready, that we didn't want to kind of distract ourselves in the short term with any of these things. And we were funded primarily through grants from the Ethereum Foundation and from generous members of the community that helped us get to this point. But the team was basically laser focused on just shipping the Ethereum protocol upgrades, and that's kind of what really drives us. Our main mission was really to scale Ethereum from the beginning. So joining off-chain was really perfect because they want to scale Ethereum as well. So I think we had a lot of shared mission statements from the beginning.
Yeah. And Stephen, I want to ask you, from your perspective, I mean, I have the benefit of being an investor in Arbitrum, so, full disclosure there. I'm quite familiar with all the work that you guys have been doing. I think a lot of people, to your point, don't really realize that it's been years in development. And Arbitrum really, people started learning about it, kind of less than a year ago, I guess. And now it's grown to, for across many metrics, the most popular L2, and you launched Nitro. How does the acquisition change the game for you guys, based on your roadmap, and what can we expect, going forward now that you've combined these forces?
Yeah, so let me just take Raul's last example and give you an example of how we can, how we're approaching the same problems from different angles. So Raul mentioned EIP 4844, which is going to lower one of our biggest costs, which is a data cost on Ethereum. And that's something which is useful across the Ethereum ecosystem. It's not just limited to us. It's really, it's a multi-team effort that we're participating in, but really very valuable for lots of people. Nitro, which you mentioned, this big upgrade we launched. One of the features of Nitro was advanced compression, which is using less data on Ethereum. So there's the same problem, which is, hey, one of the largest costs on Arbitrum is the data we put in Ethereum and the cost to store that data. How do we solve that? So the layer 2 solution, the Nitro solution, says, let's use less data, right? Let's compress it more and really eke out and the amount of data that we need per transaction, get that to the minimum. So therefore the costs go down because we're using less data. Complementary to that, but getting at the same problem is, the work that Raul mentioned on EIP 4844 and other similar initiatives, which is let's get the cost of the data that you have to use lower. And it's really the combination of these two that will allow us to have the lowest cost, right? When we get the data to the cheapest point that it can be, but also using the minimal amount of data that we need to do, we will be at our optimal cost. And that's just one, actually very in the weeds example, but I think it's a really good, way to think about, way to see how we can complement each other. We can take the same problem and come at it in different angles. And I think that's very, very valuable. And over time, I think, we're just starting, right? This acquisition, we announced it quite quickly. So it's really the very, very early days of us working together. But we'll see, we're already seeing in these, just the conversations, just the bringing of the minds together, that there's so much that we can learn from each other and so many ways to tackle these problems, because really we do have these very aligned goals of doing that. We're also very excited to have Prism now under Off-Chain Labs umbrella and to continue to support that. And that's really something which you mentioned before. How do you think about supporting these open source projects? And our commitment is Prism will remain open source and we will fund it. So that's something that we're excited to do for the community and continue to do for the community. And one thing that Raul and Preston have told me, that at least, from the few weeks that we've already spent together, is that they already have more of their time to focus on Prism development because a lot of their previous overhead has been reduced, which is very exciting to us. So, all in all, we're excited for Prism, to continue to fund Prism as an open source and neutral project, but there are so many synergies that we can have, both from the way that we think about it, the way that we approach the problems, and also the different angles that we have to really tackle our shared goal, which is scale Ethereum, build a scalable layer 1 solution and a layer 2 solution that sits on top of that can scale smart contracts and also make it user-friendly, developer-friendly, and really open and accessible.
Yeah. Maybe I want to take a pause here because I don't think a lot of people really know what it is to work in open source, kind of like for Ethereum, if you will, like you developing like an Ethereum client. It feels like on one side, Arbitrum, you guys were funded and working on an L2, and you sort of deployed, and that was that. And on the other perspective, something like Prysmatic Labs is working with the Ethereum community, perhaps more. It's a more delicate dance, and trying to everyone to kind of agree on a particular standard, and the coordination is much more challenging, I think. And so I am curious to get your perspective, Raul, on what it looks like to kind of work on open source. How difficult was it? If you can give us kind of the inside perspective on how difficult it was to get the Ethereum community to agree on the merge, and then now on towards an eye of like, how do new EIPs really get kind of developed and implemented?
Yeah, one big challenge is definitely coordination. Ethereum has been long criticized for being very slow to innovate, and I think that that criticism is warranted to a big extent. I think Ethereum's governance has been pretty fluid and flexible over the years, and I think it's gotten to a point where I think it's a lot stronger than ever. We have a lot of different teams that are voicing their opinions, that bring really good arguments and points as to what the future of Ethereum should be. It's like there is no boss in Ethereum, right? It's contrary to popular belief, Vitalik doesn't have a master node in his bedroom that he can turn off the chain. And it's been really great to see how many really great ideas and perspectives there are in protocol development. We have been navigating this messy kind of world of ideas for almost I think 5 years at this point. So we bring a lot of perspective into how to navigate Ethereum's future upgrades. So by representing Off-Chain Labs, we can kind of bring a lot of ideas from their perspective into the protocol, and try to basically try to coordinate with other parties to decide whether or not these are good ideas. Mm-hmm. The really great thing is that there is one thing to chat about, is that we don't have like absolute power over the protocol by any means. There are, like I said, many different teams with different interests, and that's really great. So working on open source has been challenging. We've been navigating it for a few years, and we feel very comfortable with kind of how to propose new ideas to Ethereum. Mm-hmm. And we think that joining forces with Off-Chain will just give us a lot more capacity to do that, and just do things in the best interest of the protocol.
Mm-hmm. So Stephen, we touched on this earlier. Arbitrum recently released the Nitro update. I'm curious, what are the next kind of big ticket items on the roadmap? What's next on the scaling frontier for you guys?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the way Nitro came about, by the way, wasn't even like a year ago. We said, okay, the big design spec, we're going to launch, Nitro. It was really us thinking and going back and saying, okay, we launched the first optimistic roll-up, code complete into production. How can we improve it? How can we improve it from a cost perspective, from a node resources perspective, right? Across many different metrics. And that's what Nitro came out of. It really came out of this goal to say, there's this tendency, especially, last year coming out of, it was August 31st that we launched. And actually, if you look at the Nitro code base, the first commit to the production Nitro code base was made September 7th. So September 8th, 7 or 8 days after we launched, the biggest event in our company history. Our company was 3 years old already and just put its first code into production. We were already thinking about and actually committing code to making it better and really replacing large parts of it. And that's basically the mindset that we have. There's this tendency to say, okay, we did it. We're ahead. We have a lot of adoption. The technology looks good, but we constantly want to think ahead and think, how do we get even better? Because the reason is, the basic reason, scaling is really a relative term, right? So you scale, and then more users come, and then more demand comes, and then if the capacity stays where it was, the prices go up. No, you still scale. Even if you 10x your capacity, and 10x demand comes, you still have 10x capacity, but the prices will continue to go up. And usually when people ask for a scaling solution, they want one that has excess capacity, so the prices can remain relatively low and stable as well. So a big question that we have is, okay, so we did Nitro and we increased our capacity on the order of 7 to 10x. Can we do even better, right? And we also lowered our fees in there. Can we do this again? Because despite what the market conditions might say now, we're pretty bullish on the future of Ethereum and the future of smart contracts. And we're sure the demand is only going to continue to increase. And we're constantly thinking ahead, because what happens is otherwise you don't think that. And then when the market does pop back, people come and say, hey, where were you guys? You weren't working for the past year and a half? I was like, well, so we're very much thinking ahead. And how do we do the equivalent of Nitro again? How do we get even better scaling? And there are also some other things we're working on as well. So scaling, obviously, we are in a very good place now, but there's a list of different things in order to make like this Ethereum and Arbitrum the best platform. There's like a list of things you need to do, and you solve the top one, and then the second and third one become most important too. So the things that come to mind are questions around state growth and state bloat and how to manage that, right? So a lot of the scaling that we've done now is focused really on computation. But the state of these blockchains continue to grow. And are there a way that we can, via, say, light clients or other initiatives, manage state better so people can participate in the network without ever increasing state? And also we can increase the capacity of the network in a way that's inclusive and does, you don't need to run these like mega nodes that have, mega capacity. That's one. And the other thing that is big on our roadmap as a very general principle, there are many projects that are aligned to this, but making the developer and user experience even better, right? Today, we match in many ways the Ethereum developer experience, and we're very, very proud of that. And, it's really an incredible experience, and it's incredible that we're able to do that inside a layer 2 rollup. There's this very complex machine that allows you to replicate, the full EVM experience on top of the EVM, and Nitro, basically takes us to as close or as equivalent to Ethereum as possible. But then the question becomes, are there things that we can do and innovate in the layer 2 space that are even faster, that get us to an even better place than Ethereum? It's not to say that any of the Ethereum compatibility will go away. It won't. And that will always be there. But can we make this platform even more friendly to developers, to onboard new developers and to onboard new users? And that's a big question in our mind. So EVM compatibility and equivalence is critically important, but can we supplement that? And as Raul mentioned before, Ethereum sometimes, and for very good reason, takes time to innovate. But are there some of these pending EIPs or these Ethereum improvement proposals that we can maybe adopt first in a rollup even? That would be really interesting, and these are things that we're looking at very closely.
Yeah. To add on to that, I think the essence is that we care about EVM equivalence and being really close to Ethereum for security aspects. So we want to make sure that when you withdraw from L2 to L1, all those security guarantees are there, and you're not cutting corners, right? But that's really all we need. We can do a lot of crazy innovation on L2 itself. That as long as we maintain those security guarantees, and we can maintain a friendliness to developers, you can do a lot of really, really cool things on L2, and you can move faster on many fronts. It's always a delicate balancing act, but you can do a lot as long as you maintain that base constraint of security at L1 through fraud proofs.
Yeah. So, Stephen, I've heard you say before there's been great progress on ZK EVMs. There's a few projects that have been focusing on that, but you said that we aren't kind of ready for prime time. And as far as I can remember, zero knowledge proofs have been kind of really fascinating. However, I would tend to agree with you that it's been kind of slow to come about. I am curious, has Arbitrum started to work on ZK tech? Is this part of your roadmap at some point? Or do you remain kind of in the optimistic rollout camp?
That's a great question. So first, I'll mention that, from my background, I mentioned I started off at Princeton. I was doing cryptographic research there. I actually wrote papers on zero knowledge proof systems, signature schemes using zero knowledge proof systems, and did a lot of early work, a lot of work in MPC as well, multi-party computation. So definitely did not come into the Arbitrum problem with a bias against ZK or advanced cryptography. So we came in with a very open mind, and our decision, back some time ago when we started looking at this, but also today, is ZK technology is very exciting and very promising. And I'd even go further and say the pace of innovation there definitely is very fast, and definitely would surprise the 5 years ago me self, right? So I 5 years ago would not have expected the innovation that we've seen, but I think we're still breakthroughs away from a ZK system that's competitive with an optimistic rollup. And to go a level deeper, what do I mean by competitive? Among a few axes. Number one is price. the cost of running the transactions, the cost is on any ZK design that I've seen today is orders of magnitude higher than on an optimistic rollup. And by the way, what I mean by this is, because it gets a little bit confusing sometimes, people like to talk about the cost of verifying ZK transactions. That's the lower cost. And that's the cost you see on the blockchain. But remember, the blockchain is handed this proof. And then the question is, who created this proof? And that's where the computational problem is. That's where the really heavy machinery is, and the part that's a bit opaque to users. And users might say, well, it's okay because there's someone that's generating it for me, so I don't have to worry about this. But that's actually not a great approach, because you want these systems to be sustainable. And you want to know, hey, how much does it cost to generate that proof? I'm happy that you're doing it, whoever you are. I'm happy that you're generating this for us, but how much does it cost you? And the reason you want to know that is because what happens if you go away? Or what happens if your funding source goes away? We're building scaling technology, and you need to scale sustainably, right? It's not sustainable to say scaling technology is funded by this VC, because that money won't last forever. And you don't want to get to a place where, they've cornered the market by making it really cheap, but now they're going to increase. In some industries, that's the right strategy, right? Think about Amazon and diapers.com, right? These strategies have played out well over time. But when the thing you're selling is scaling technology, you really want to make sure that it's paying for the cost of those systems. So proving cost is one, and also compatibility. Zero knowledge proof systems today don't work on the VM architectures that we run natively on, like EVM or really any other virtual machine design or typical computer machine design. They run on circuits, and any attempt to take an EVM or another similar popular VM structure and apply it to these systems, it's basically tacking on levels of compilers and levels of inefficiency, and sometimes just incompatibilities. You can't always fit the EVM you want into the circuitry needed for ZK. And what you have is then extra inefficiencies or extra costs, but also just incompatibilities. And the question then becomes, when can we have this technology in a way that's competitive, both from cost and compatibility? And to date, it's not clear to me that we'll get there. But the thing about us, to answer the second half of your question, are we
just to hear you say that we'll get there, or that we'll ever get there, or is there a state where we will get there? Similarly to how you were thinking about scalability even before Ethereum, and now we're here with ORs.
I'm not sure that will get there, to be honest, with the ZK to a point where it's cost competitive. We're definitely breakthroughs away, but I'm not sure that we won't either. Honestly, I don't really know. We're definitely not there today. That's what I do know. There are some incredibly smart people working on this and making really good progress. So I would not be shocked if at some point we got there. There are some fundamental incompatibilities and really breakthroughs that need to be made to actually get there. But based on the pace of innovation, I wouldn't say it's impossible that we get there at all. I'm not sure, but we're definitely not there today. And so when I think, how do I approach this problem, or what do we think about it? I'll take Nitro as an example. So if you look at the Arbitrum paper, 2018 Arbitrum Princeton research paper, that's when we published the paper at Usenix Security, which is a academic security conference. One of the key innovations was the Arbitrum virtual machine. Really great piece of technology, was optimized to get these one-step fraud proofs to be really, really small. It was really nice. And it was probably the thing that got that paper into this conference. Usenix is a top conference. It has a high acceptance, very low acceptance rate. And that's probably the big innovation there. With Nitro, we actually retired the AVM. And literally, Ed, Harry, and I spent years working on this piece of technology, only to retire it. So you might think like Nitro was a sad day for me or us, but it really wasn't. It was an extremely happy day. And the reason is, we're not coming into this into this problem or into this project. We're not coming in saying we need to use this particular tool. I'm not coming in saying optimistic is the way to go. I'm not coming in saying ZK is the way to go. I'm saying we have a real problem, and we have users, by the way, that want a solution to that problem today. They don't want to wait. They want a solution today, and they want the best technology available today. And by the way, in 5 years, they're going to want the best technology available in 5 years. And I can promise you this, whether I'm a ZK maxi or an optimistic maxi, it doesn't matter. In 5 years, all this stuff is going to look primitive. Like you look back 5 years ago, what we were like writing in these even smart contract discussion boards, it looks early, it looks primitive, and we know so much more today, and that will be the case in 5 years. So I can guarantee you that, at least in terms of my thoughts of where development will be across every platform, 5 years from now, Arbitrum won't look like Arbitrum today. No optimistic will look like any optimistic system today. And no ZK system will look like the ones they do today. And that's why, so our commitment is we will continue to develop and utilize the best and technology available at that time, but with a commitment to delivering this scale to users and making sure that it's usable. Because if you tell a user, like, we're almost there, it's like, give me what you have today and continue to get the plane in the air and work on the engine while that's what users actually want. And so that's our commitment. And now your question might be like, okay, so is that going to be ZK in 5 years? I really don't know. I'm sure it will be much, many innovations on top of what we do today. And some of those we're already working on in-house, but I don't know if it'll be ZK. And I think that's one of our strengths. So if you look at many of our competitors, particularly really across the optimistic and ZK space, the name of their company is often like that technology is the tool is inscribed there. Your ZK this or something that has
it's
snark
like
or star.
the .com businesses, right? Pets.com or, like .com.
Yes, very much. And now they
.or,
.zk. Yes, and now these all, by the way, like, it's funny. I was actually looking at these, like I think drugstore.com like goes to Walgreens. Like, it's like, why are we talking about the tool? We should be talking about the thing we want to deliver to users, and that's really that's really our approach. Off-chain Labs wants to deliver scaling that utilizes off-chain technologies. Those could be ZK technologies, those could be optimistic technologies, but that's what we're really committed to. And we have, and if ZK comes through and those breakthroughs happen, I'm putting myself on the record here, I will not eat my words. I will embrace that fully and be happy to be part of it. I just haven't seen that today. And we have a mission to deliver the best technology to users today and continue to do that in the future.
Yeah. I guess it's a complex question, right? Because I think what I'm curious to get your perspective on is, we've reached these huge milestones with Nitro and other L2s, which have increased the capacity of Ethereum in a meaningful way. Can you just put some more context for users around that? How much there are a number of metrics, some which are vanity, some which are not, more substantial when we talk about scalability, and you bring up a great point around the sustainability of said scalability. I am curious, how many users could Ethereum support today? Right now, we're in a bear market now, but in a raging bull market, we have NFTs, we have gaming, we have DeFi. I'm curious, how do you think about the capacity of Nitro today and other L2s for users to try to kind of wrap their head around can Ethereum support X or Y?
Yeah. So I guess I'll start there, and Raul, please chime in if you have any thoughts. So Nitro, actually, it's pretty easy to compare it to the capacity of Ethereum. Nitro does about 7x the capacity of Ethereum, or I should say it has the capabilities to do 7x the capacity of Ethereum before it starts to congest. And we actually have another network called Arbitrum Nova, which is focused on gaming, and Reddit did a big launch on that. That's another 7x capacity, and there are obviously other rollups and other scaling solutions all sit on top of Ethereum as well. So in terms of and I didn't really answer your questions in terms of, because what people like to do is they like to use this TPS, or transactions per second metric. And then you look and say, what are these transactions? And usually they use null transactions. That's not helpful. So 7x the capacity of Ethereum is more meaningful. And the way we measure that, by the way, is gas per second, right? And that's the actual metric that Ethereum uses, and that's the metric that we actually meter. So you can have a block that uses a lot of a single transaction, or you can have a block that's thousands of transactions. It doesn't matter because the true resource that we're really measuring, and this is the one that we're metering on, is gas per second. And so Arbitrum Nitro does about 7 million gas per second, whereas Ethereum does roughly 1 million gas per second. And by the way, a lot of that is that's why 7 million. It really shows around sustainability. That's the place where we believe it can be sustainable. The software can support higher than that. You'll see there are some alternative layer ones that actually take Ethereum software and go much higher than that, but we believe that sustainability is key. So we're not comfortable making it higher than that until we solve some of these data problems. Because again, we want this to be a system, not that we have a very long-term vision. We're not looking to, turn it up, make subsidize transactions, make it super low, and then the system just falls over in a year or two. That's not winning. For us, we're thinking about setting up a sustainable system that can last for decades and beyond.
Where does that go with EIP 4844?
That's a great question. Well, imagine that all of a sudden, you get this this 2-order magnitude reduction in the biggest cost that Arbitrum faces to L1, right? So that cost directly manifests on users today. Like when you pay a fee, you're basically amortizing the cost of L1 and L2 transaction fees and capacity onto users. Imagine if all of a sudden applications get 100x cheaper, right? Overall, it's so much you can do. And I see this in terms of the ability to do things that are not even possible on Ethereum today. Applications that just have high throughput requirements, financial applications, games, right? Like famously, there's this game called Dark Forest that runs on this Gnosis chain that's is a pretty popular game that on an Ethereum compatible blockchain, but it just the team cannot ship it to Ethereum L1 because it's so expensive, and every transaction that people do on that game goes on chain. And that's not possible on L1, right? With L2 and with things like Nova, and even with EIP 4844 will bring just such a reduction in that the next bottleneck would just be execution, and be basically transaction execution. So I think about it in terms of what are things that are not even possible to do today. When you get 10x, 100x cheaper, like, wow, it opens up such a new design space that I don't even know what people will use it for, but I'm excited for that option.
All right, everyone, time for a quick word from Circle and USDC. As a crypto user, you know the power of stablecoins, dollar digital currencies that transcend borders, banking hours, and legacy financial rails. Well, Circle's USDC has quickly become one of the most trusted and widely used stablecoins. It's simple. People use USDC because of its composability, its stability, and its reserve transparency. And USDC isn't just adopted by a few of us DeFi degens and DAOs and NFT marketplaces, crypto companies alike. They all leverage USDC to diversify their treasury, asset management, and ecosystem-wide composability. The adoption's clear. USDC has grown to more than $50 billion in circulation since launching in 2018. We all have, and we all will, continue to take shots on our favorite volatile crypto assets, obviously, but USDC is one of the easiest ways to store your funds in a stable asset that can be used to send value around the world almost instantly. It lowers the cost of cross-border payments. It integrates into the growing ecosystem of crypto apps. As a seamless, trusted dollar digital currency, USDC is a 0-to-1 opportunity for the financial system. If you want to learn more about USDC, I would recommend you check out the recently published Transparency Hub on Circle.com. It's a great update to Circle's content on USDC. It outlines everything from links to their weekly reserve reports, monthly attestations, blog posts that are written by their exec team that highlight how and why USDC was built the way it is. Really recommend it. Just go to circle.com/transparency to access it. Now, let's get back to the show.
Yeah. I want to transition a little bit. In March, you announced this concept of Arbitrum AnyTrust chains. Can you introduce that concept and how you see these chains kind of playing a role in Ethereum's scalability future?
Yeah, and actually, it's a really good transition because it really directly relates to the previous conversation around 4844. AnyTrust chains are just like Arbitrum rollup chains. So actually, let me just do a second of terminology. Right? So we have technologies and then we have chains. We have two technologies that we develop: Arbitrum rollup, which is also a type of optimistic rollup. That's one set of technology that we build on. And then the one you just mentioned, which I'll talk about, is Arbitrum AnyTrust. Now, we also have two public blockchains. We have Arbitrum 1, which is our rollup chain. That's the chain that launched last August 31st, which many people just call Arbitrum, technically called Arbitrum 1. And then there's Arbitrum Nova, which is our public AnyTrust chain. Right, so we have chains and technologies. So just to make that clear, so what is Arbitrum AnyTrust technology? So it solves the same problem of, so EIP 4844 is getting on, Arbitrum's Arbitrum rollup's large cost is putting all this data on chain, and again, so the layer one way to look at that problem is, hey, let's try to make this data a lot cheaper. We asked ourselves, are there other solutions here? And we weren't going to take the data off Ethereum and Arbitrum 1. We want Arbitrum 1 to remain a rollup. We said, can we build another chain or another technology that doesn't put all that data on chain, but still provides a high level of security? And that's what Arbitrum AnyTrust is. So what it does is, instead of putting all the data on Ethereum, it uses a committee and sends the data to this data availability committee. And as the AnyTrust name implies, it requires you not to trust the entire committee, but only a minimally trusted set of the committee. I think you only have to trust one or two members of the committee, and then you know that the data will be available. And the committee is doing this. They're just saying, yes, we're storing the data. And then rather than sending the data to Ethereum, you're sending these signatures to Ethereum. The committee members are signing and saying, I will provide you the data if you need it. And that's what gets sent to Ethereum. And the question then is, how do we get confidence here? Who is the committee? And in practice, we set it up with remember, you don't have to trust the whole committee. So you want a variety of players that everyone will have comfort. Like, oh, I trust Web2 people, so I trust them. I trust Web3 companies, so I trust them. So who's on the committee in practice? It's Off-Chain Labs. So us, it's Reddit, it's Consensus, it's P2P, Lido, it's Google, Cloud, and also FTX and QuickNode. So a nice, I'm sure there are a lot of people that trust some and don't trust others, and there are a lot of different, but hopefully the idea is that everyone can get comfort in someone in that committee and say, oh, I trust them, and they're going to give me the data if need be. So is Arbitrum AnyTrust chain a roll-up? It is not. But it's a lot more secure than a side chain or an alternative layer one. In these solutions, you have your own consensus. You typically require 2/3 of the validators, to be honest. But here you require, again, this AnyTrust property. You just need to have, one or two of these members being honest and you trust them, and then everything works. But interestingly, and I don't know the answer to this. If EIP 4844 succeeds and the data cost becomes super, super low on Ethereum, maybe this just becomes a roll-up. And actually, one of the affordances that we built in this has a fallback to roll-up even today. So if the committee stops operating, Arbitrum AnyTrust chain, so Arbitrum Nova doesn't just stop running, it just becomes a roll-up, and again, just starts putting all that data in Ethereum. So you can imagine in a world where the Ethereum, where Raul and his team succeeds and get the Ethereum data cost really low, we're going to say, well, revisit this and say, hey, let's just turn off the committee. And then basically the chain will just become a roll-up at that point. It will start putting data on Ethereum, and maybe at some point that will become feasible. But today, and just to say, so why did we build this? Like, we have these two products. Are they competitive? Why did we build this? The real reason is we weren't trying to compete with ourselves, or we think roll-up security is the gold standard. And for the DeFi projects that we have, we have a very, very strong DeFi ecosystem, very strong NFT ecosystem. Those players should stay. Those projects should stay on Arbitrum One. The conversation with Nova was really around gaming and social projects. These weren't projects that were coming to us and saying, hey, I could have launched an Arbitrum One, but you have something a little bit cheaper. These were projects that were saying, I really want to be on Ethereum. I really want to be on Arbitrum. But the problem is I'm a game, and even paying 10 cents per transaction, it just doesn't work. And they weren't like making this, you can be all principles and philosophical, you should believe in Ethereum. It's like, okay, but like, I am a game, and a game has to be fun first. And if a user's wallet is getting drained, that's not so much fun. So it was really around those people that they weren't choosing between Ethereum and Arbitrum One. They were saying, we're going to go to an alternative solution that has lower security. We said, hey, can we give them something that has a lot of very high security as well? And that's what we developed with Arbitrum, AnyTrust chains, and particularly Arbitrum Nova.
Yeah, I guess you touched there at the end on something that I wanted to kind of switch a little bit on from the user perspective, and what kind of things you're seeing on the ground in terms of the applications that are getting traction, the type of user behavior that is happening once people bridge over to Arbitrum. Maybe if you can comment on kind of, from your perspective, there are multiple L2s, there are other kind of L1s. I understand we're in a difficult kind of environment, if you will, bear market, let's just call it as it is. But what will be the key to attract users and applications to Arbitrum? Like, how competitive is it versus other L2s, other L1s? What's been really resonating with projects when you go to them and really kind of convince them to deploy an Arbitrum versus another chain, or maybe they're doing multiple deployments?
So a lot of it starts from the technology, which is the technology is feature complete. We're in beta mode today. We have administrative controls, and we're comfortable. We disclose that on top of every page, but the technology is there, feature complete, fully code complete, and it's the only roll up that can actually say that today. And that brings a lot of confidence to people that the code is there. They can look at it, they can run it, and the technology is advanced. And in many ways, our team is really leading the roll-up space. Our interactive fraud proofs have now become the standard, not just for Arbitrum, but for all optimistic roll-ups. And all optimistic roll-ups are working towards building a system that uses the interactive fraud proofs that we innovated in the roll-up context. But the truth is that's a lot of it. I think that's how we got here. But also, to be very honest, one of the nice things about the blockchain space is this synchronous calls that you can do. You can have these interactions, right? These particularly in DeFi, these multi-app interactions that happen atomically. And a lot of that is also, there's a lot of network effects and ecosystem that just sort of continues to build. You want to be where other DeFi projects are. And one thing that we're seeing on Arbitrum 1 has really become, a DeFi stronghold where many or most DeFi projects are looking there and, excited to build on top of these other projects and build with them. One particular area that I think Arbitrum is particularly strong is in the derivatives or perpetual market. We have strong projects like GMX and Mycelium and a bunch of others as well that are doing incredible work. So I would say DeFi innovation is happening on Arbitrum. And I think the starting point is people want security, particularly when it comes to financial applications. They want Ethereum security. They want a team that's building on the roadmap to a fully operational and fully decentralized roadmap. And they have confidence in our team to deliver that. But also a lot of it is then the network effect where just Arbitrum is a hub of DeFi innovation. And because so much of DeFi is these interactions, you need to be where these others are. And there's also a lot of liquidity on the chain as well, which helps. We also have incredibly strong NFT ecosystems on the platform, Treasure Marketplace and the Treasure Small Brains, if you're familiar with. These have one of the early Arbitrum NFT projects. And I think in the month of January or February, the Treasure Marketplace on Arbitrum was the number 2 marketplace by volume anywhere. OpenSea was first, and then Treasure Marketplace was second. And now, actually, just a few weeks ago, OpenSea launched on Arbitrum. I think that's going to also continue to fuel the NFT ecosystem on Arbitrum. It's definitely a lot earlier than the DeFi ecosystem, but it's already quite strong, and a lot of strong projects that are building on there and continuing to build on there as well.
I'm curious, how does the merge kind of change the usability of Ethereum? Does it really, from a user standpoint, does it really change anything? We, of course, dispelled recently that it doesn't really improve scalability. It's just like lays a different foundation for it. But this is something that we talk about a lot within the community. But, for someone that is not as deep into crypto, maybe if you could just talk a little bit about how important that is.
I'd say there are like two really, really concrete changes that people are going to start to see more. And one of them is that Ethereum has always had variable block times, right? And a function of proof of work. Like you have sometimes blocks happening at 9 seconds, 15 seconds. That variance has been reduced over time a little bit, but with Ethereum, with the merge, actually now you have fixed block time. So there will always be a block in Ethereum, at 12-second intervals. Some blocks could be missed if a validator fails to propose a block, but that's one concrete change for applications, right? Previously, it's been a pain for developers sometimes having these variable block times. So having these fixed intervals is pretty nice. Second thing that happens is now Ethereum has built-in light client support. That is basically now you can run a very lightweight kind of node. And how lightweight are we talking? Well, like only a few hundred, maybe like 100 kilobytes of data per day, meaning you can probably run this in like a smart toaster or on like a pocket watch. That validates and follows the actual blockchain. So some really cool things you can do is when you use something like MetaMask or Infura, you can actually validate that the data that this third party is giving you is the correct data from the blockchain. So like if I request, hey, what is my account balance on, or on this, or how much, show me my trade history on Uniswap, you can actually verify against your local node that this data is correct and has a lot more data integrity. So it gives a lot more security than we had before and gives users more agency in verifying data, which is pretty cool and pretty concrete. Like a recent project, plugin for MetaMask, I think came out recently, or a project launch that lets you build a safer MetaMask or something. It's pretty neat. But more importantly, I think the merge really sets the foundation for the next big upgrades to Ethereum, which is this upgrade that will lower the cost of rollups. There are some really cool things on the horizon for just better scalability for Ethereum. So actually, like what we call sharding of data, just coming out, and better things around censorship resistance. So that's a big one. It's been a big topic recently in Ethereum with people talking about OFAC and blocks being censored at the protocol layer due to like flash bots and things like that. So there are big things on the horizon that will just make the protocol a lot stronger and more censorship resistant. And the merge sets the foundation for that, as we just spoke.
Yeah, definitely. Stephen, I want to switch the conversation now a little bit to your perspective on, which I think is super instrumental. We talk about gaming, we talk about social applications. I'd be remiss not to talk about Reddit and how important that is. So maybe if you can just talk about the conversations that happen with Reddit and other similar enterprises, what they're prioritizing. There's certainly a lot of I think still hesitation from a lot of companies because of regulatory risk, technology risk. There continues to be hacks. There's, crypto is not an easy environment. We're still very early and these things, break and have bugs and whatnot. But, we had this moment in 2017 where there was a lot of announcements of companies going into blockchain, but not crypto. But now you're seeing folks like Reddit roll out these community points. So is it real? Do you think that enterprises are appreciating the innovations that are happening from the scalability front? And what can we expect, going forward? Are we going to see more Reddits? What does a Reddit deployment look like? It's a lot there. So maybe you could just, comment on it.
Yeah, I'd love to. So, the history of actually our relationship with Reddit goes back about 2.5 years or a little less, 2 years in July to a public, what they call the Great Reddit Scaling Bake Off. Where Reddit said, hey, we have this idea, this is community points, right? This idea of having a decentralized point system. So you contribute to communities, you talk, you comment, you post, etc. You get these points, and then you can actually own your points. So they don't sit in a centralized database, but they're actually blockchain points, which means once they're granted to you, Reddit or anyone else can't take them away from you or shut down your account and you lose them. But it also means they're more portable, right? So you can have another developer building an experience around Reddit's community points because they're all open and live on the blockchain. And Reddit's like, we have this idea. How can we scale this? And about 20 some odd teams submitted proposals to this. And then a year later, so July of 2021 was when Reddit said, okay, we've chosen to go with Arbitrum for this. And then this past summer was when they actually launched it on our Arbitrum Nova mainnet. And the reason why I think it's such an interesting application is because it shows how enterprises, I think, are thinking about blockchains today, and which is very different than when you were thinking about it in, say, 2017 or 2018. A 2017 or 2018 version of this would be like, hey, let's take the entirety of Reddit and move it onto the blockchain. Right? That was like a lot of the nuance in the conversations. Like, I'm sure you've seen, certainly as an investor, I'm sure you've seen proposals that let's take all your healthcare data and put it on the blockchain. So like a lot of these proposals were very early and not very nuanced. There's like this new technology, let's just swap it out and use it. Whereas this is a much more mature proposal and a much more mature system being built, which is like, no, Reddit's fine because there's a lot of good reasons to have Web. Web 3 is not replacing Web 2; it's complementing Web 2. I think that's something people miss, right? You have to find, where are the synergies, right? Where are the ways that you can complement this? And that's where, gaming, that's why the problem of gaming and the cost of gaming, by the way, is so difficult and such a hard problem, because in 2017, you would say, wow, look, I built this game on a blockchain. So what that every move costs $5. So what if like you have to wait 15 seconds every time you press a button? But because the people playing then were the enthusiasts and they were excited about these games. 2022, moving into 2023, we're talking, gaming studios that are really developing for the mass market. And you know what? We have to accept, and it's okay that many of their users are just looking for a good game. They don't really care about the underlying infrastructure. They might not want to touch the blockchain. So our number one focus has to be not making the experience worse for those users, right? Blockchain should be additive only, not degrading the experience for those users. And that's true. I think that's what we see in Reddit. So right in Reddit, if you want to be a user and continue, even in these communities that have community points, you don't have to touch the blockchain. If you're happy with Reddit just telling you this is your points balance, you don't have to go and take custody of them on the blockchain. But for those users that want to do that, that's available to them, and it's available to them at a low cost as well. So it's these really nice synergies, and it's also very, it's nice. It's clearly additive, right? You can now have an ecosystem. I can build a game and say, hey, the currency of my game are these community points. Like that's very powerful. And the ecosystems you can build around this are powerful. And that's why I'm excited about it. But I think, the thing that generalizes to gaming and enterprises in general is the maturity of these conversations, not going ahead and saying, what if I just move my entire stack to the blockchain, but thinking more nuanced? Is there any part of the blockchain, it could be really small, but that can actually make my Web2 app or Web2 experience better? And I think in many cases, the answer is yes, but it takes nuanced discussion to find what is that application and is it additive and does it hurt other users? Because these are the places you have to think. Because, we have to be very open and honest about the fact that not every user is going to want to touch the blockchain, but that doesn't mean the technologies don't add a lot of value.
Yeah. I guess that's such a... Go ahead, Raul.
Yeah, I also want to add something about, why we've been such, our team has been such Arbitrum maxis for a long time, is that the technology is simple. I think that's really important also for institutions. Like it's easy to understand and can be explained on the back of a napkin. I think that's a huge advantage that really I think optimistic rollups have. And when you have such a simple foundation, you can build so many great things upon that. You can attract a lot more people. And I think it's definitely one big advantage, I guess, over ZK technology. ZK technology is complex, to say the least. I'd say from a developer perspective, I think simplicity always wins. Simplicity wins when you can attract users to build on your platform. They understand what's going on. They understand what they need to know is simple enough to grasp, and it's a lot easier to rationalize just how close to Ethereum it is. To us, that's really important, especially for applications building, for institutions that are looking at this technology, are able to grasp it and understand really just how elegant how the solution is.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a very basic question that gets tossed around a lot. Stephen, back to your example of Reddit, which is this community points. We talk a lot about why can't this just be a centralized database? And I'm curious, what would you say to that? Because that continues to be brought up again and again, right?
So I'll give you a few examples of things that make it where it's powerful that it's not. One is, and I know I'm sure you've seen this story on other platforms or even on Reddit, where users work for years. Because a lot of users are very loyal to their communities and work for years on these points, but they don't really own these points. And it could be a glitch. They did nothing wrong. And again, I'm not saying Reddit, but generally I've seen this on the internet in many different forums where they lose access and they have to start again. So actually, in crypto we say it's not your money, your keys, not your keys, it's not your money. That's true also for the points and credits that you build on other platforms, where if you really, really want to know that when you wake up in the morning, they're still going to be there, then custody them yourself is the only way to do that. And again, many users might be content, back to the Reddit case, not actually taking ownership of them. You don't have to go to the blockchain and claim these. There's no button on Reddit that says claim these points on Arbitrum or you lose them. You can claim these points on Arbitrum if you want to, but if you don't actually have to do that, which is where I think it's an example of the additive only approach, where it's helpful but it doesn't hurt. And the other one is also the ability to open up the ecosystem to other players as well. Right? You see this in the airline industry, for example, where you have status on one airline and you want to get status on another, and you can go through a process often to get that. But the idea being, what are your maybe I have a store and I say, here's a discount. I'm a big believer in this particular community. Here's a discount to anyone that that has some amount of points or some amount of credits in this community. Right? You can actually do this because all the data is publicly verifiable. It's public. It's open, and you can do that. And you can do that in the metaverse as well, right? You can, like I said before, build a game where you say the currency in my game is these points. I want to build a game that's targeted at this particular community. There you go. You can do that, and now it exists there, as opposed to having to somehow otherwise build a link between the Reddit and the blockchain. Well, how do I know? And I need some sort of Oracle service. And there are actually some interesting solutions, some of which I've worked on in the academic sense of how do you bring this private data onto the blockchain. But for Reddit to actually be the issuer and do it, it just enables a very diverse ecosystem where they can use this as the base, but build well beyond Reddit. So again, you don't have to do any of this, but it's there for those who want, and that's why I think it's additive.
Yeah. I guess you're in the AnyTrust chain kind of example. You need to trust one of N. There's still some degree of trust, but I guess there is more guarantees of kind of more credible neutrality. I don't know if that's the right term, that invites other people to then use the points as the currency, as the standard, knowing that Arbitrum knowing that Reddit doesn't have full discretion of just, deleting the entry in the database, if they will.
Yeah. And by the way, the thing that you're trusting these players to do, it's not even like a targeted approach. It's literally to provide the data of the blockchain. Now, of course, if every single one of, Google, Reddit, Off-Chain Labs, Consensus, FTX, Lido, QuickNote, got together and said, we're going to, censor this user. So yeah, you're 1,000% right. There is that one degree of trust, but it's for most users that is that is the trade-off that the AnyTrust makes, and it makes that to get even lower cost. For most users, that's a good trade-off, and I would argue that it's a lower trust requirement than or harder to have a problem in this model than it is in many alternative layer ones, and therefore I think it's a sweet space. It's not a roll up, so there is that degree of trust, absolutely, but it does occupy a really interesting point in the design space where you can have low fees and that pretty low trust required environment.
Right. Before we round up, I want to ask you guys a question which has been more in the limelight as of recently, which is this idea of centralization and if all sort of validators are in a particular geography, is the chain at risk of being halted by a state agent? I'm curious to get your general thoughts on this increasing concern. Is it being overblown? How real it is? Are there things that you're doing from a development standpoint to mitigate this? So yeah, open-ended question. Feel free to comment. You may not be able to comment on this, but just kind of curious on what your, both of your takes are on this particular topic.
Yeah, I can comment on some of the facts that are happening on L1 currently with censorship. So, it's no secret that today a lot of transactions are going through what are known as blocked relays. So operated by centralized entities such as flashbots. And the reason people do this is because they want to be able to reap the benefits of sending transactions on Ethereum. They want to be able to do arbitrage. They want to do things like this. And these are possible through these relays that, prevent you from being front run and help you package transactions into bundles and things like that. So, the most popular relay from flashbots is censoring currently Ethereum transactions. And I believe around almost 51% or more of Ethereum blocks on mainnet today are compliant with OFAC regulations because a lot of them are being produced by these flashbots relays. Is that really as alarming as it seems? Well, even if only 1% of validators on Ethereum are not censoring, your transaction still has a 95% chance of being included within 1 hour. So it doesn't mean that these transactions will never make it on chain. They will still make it on chain. And it will just take a little bit longer than normal, right? Can we do something about this? Because to be frank, it is a big problem. And I think the only way to do this is to really hard technology that will prevent this from happening in the first place. And there are things being worked on today on L1 that will prevent these things. One of them are what are called transaction inclusion proofs. So as a validator on Ethereum, you can request these relay to give you proof that it will include a transaction. And if it doesn't, then you will not use it, and basically they will lose you as a validator. So there are marketplace solutions, there are technology solutions that can be done to reduce this, and they're being very heavily developed. It's going slower than expected because Ethereum proof of stake just happened, and this new model just basically went live less than a month ago. But it's definitely at the forefront of all the developers' minds. Everyone wants to fix this problem, and there are solutions moving forward. And the way to solve it is really through technology, basically making it so that no matter what, like they won't be able to censor it. And that's just the reality of things, because the base layer needs to be as censorship resistant as possible. As of course, that's what L2s and rollups rely on. So yeah, we are working on that, and it is a problem, but it doesn't mean that Ethereum is, it doesn't mean that these transactions are censored forever.
Yeah, I think, Ethereum obviously is a decentralized network. And the nature of being a decentralized network is you have a different, a decentralized makeup of nodes, and with that decentralized, jurisdictions and regulations, and so I think having many different representations there is actually strong for Ethereum, and building a strong decentralized network obviously is one of Ethereum's core values. And one of the reasons why we at Arbitrum choose to build on top of Ethereum is because we believe that the security and the decentralization of Ethereum are really much stronger than everyone else. And that's on the base layer of Ethereum, right? Of course, there are operators at different levels, and to the extent that these operators are, of course, individuals or entities, they make different decisions. But Ethereum is certainly in the smart contract space, I think the gold standard for security and decentralization. but that doesn't mean that it can't be more decentralized over time, of course.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, this has been a fascinating discussion, gents. We can keep going on for hours. I know you guys have a lot to work on, so I don't want to take more of your time. I guess any parting thoughts for listeners out there, particularly towards the end, of where they can learn more about what you guys are doing, your roadmap, how they could get involved. But before we get there, just any kind of parting thoughts or things you'd like to talk about before we wrap it up.
Yeah, I'll just say I'm super excited about the Prysmatic Labs acquisition and working together with Raul, Preston, and the entire team. I think this is going to be extremely synergistic and beneficial to us and to the community. And you'll start to see, that over time, where we have just more minds working together towards these same problems and building really great solutions, but at the same time committed to developing Prism as a completely neutral and open source project. So I think we'll have and a well-funded project. So we'll have the best of both worlds here, absolutely. And if this sounds interesting to anyone, and please feel free to get in touch. We are growing our team, our joint team. So we're growing. We have room for more people building Prism, have more people building Arbitrum, and more people working on these really hard problems. So please find us if that's interesting.
Yeah, there's just so much. There's just so much to be said for bringing teams that have experience in the community to work under the same roof. And I think we're also very excited to be part of Off-Chain Labs. I think even the first week we're already starting to work on some of the really cool things coming to Arbitrum, and can't wait for the community to see what's next. It's really fantastic. There's so much in the works for Ethereum, and it is really the place to be. For applications. So much innovation, so many great teams building on it, thinking about the hard problems and coming up with solutions. This bear market is a time to build, and it's to us it's really a pleasure to be part of this. So we're extremely bullish for the future of optimistic rollups and for the future of just really scaling technologies that scale Ethereum.
Absolutely. I think a lot of these developments go unnoticed during bear markets, and I've always found the bear markets are the best time to build core infra that we didn't really have the time to pay much attention during raging bull markets. So, gents, thank you for coming on. I think you're doing incredible work to scale Ethereum, or if it's not Ethereum, whatever the next solution is over the next 5-10 years. I think a lot will change, but it's great to see both of you guys and your teams really be at it during crazy market volatility and cycles over the years. And so really excited to see what comes next in this combined chapter. Thanks for coming on, and looking forward to maybe continuing this conversation further down the road, but wishing you the best of luck, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Jen.